The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the smell, not of rot or rust, though both would have been perfectly understandable after 700 years on ice, but lemons. Artificial lemons. The kind they used in floor polish back when humans thought the answer to interstellar diplomacy was waxed linoleum. A soft chime echoed overhead, followed by a voice far too cheerful to be real. Revival successful. Congratulations. Subject 0139. You've outlived everyone you ever knew. I blinked at the ceiling, which was some mix of oxidized steel and peeling propaganda decals. One of them had a sun with a smiling face and the words humanity forever forward. Except someone, or something, had clawed off the forever and replaced it with fugitive. My muscles screamed as I sat up, stiff like I'd been stored in a warehouse under a motivational poster that read, "Preserve the past." I wasn't sure what felt worse, the cold burn in my joints or the sense that the universe had gone on quite happily without me. Vitals nominal, the voice continued, except for mild tachycardia, cranial dehydration, and elevated sarcasm levels. Nice to know my personality survived, I rasped, voice dry as Martian sand. Where's the nearest coffee machine? I'm sorry, the voice replied, chipper as ever, but caffeine was outlawed by the Omega Health Accord in 4312 due to its radicalizing effects on office workers. Of course it was. I swung my legs off the cryo table and promptly stepped on something that squealed. A spherical maintenance bot rolled backward, blinking red. Watch it, icicle! It snapped in a synthetic voice that sounded like a disgruntled librarian. Some of us are trying to mop here. You're a mop bot? Name's Myrtle. Model E-L9. Mopping. Surveillance. Sasset rolled in a small circle and buzzed indignantly. You're lucky I didn't report you for unauthorized foot placement. I eyed the little thing. You always this pleasant? Only to frozen fossils who wake up thinking the galaxy still cares. I dragged myself to what passed for a window. Beyond the half-shattered frame of a long-dead security shield, I saw sky, ink black, studded with lazy stars. And further out, drifting in quiet orbit, the remains of what had once been a human vessel, charred, hollow, like a forgotten monument. How long has it been, I asked. Myrtle hesitated. Give or take, 7 centuries. Humans are not exactly trending. I turned to him. Extinct? Officially, unofficially, you're standing here leaking fluids and sarcasm. I rubbed my forehead, a faint buzz growing in the back of my skull. Any idea why I was left here? You were marked as potentially problematic, which in Dominion code translates to do not poke unless absolutely necessary. You must have really ticked someone off, I snorted. Sounds about right. I found an old tactical jacket in a storage bin, slapped the dust off it, and zipped it halfway. My fingers hesitated on the insignia over the chest. Soul rebellion. Faded. Dangerous. I let it be. I need to get off this rock, I muttered. Oh, joy, Myrtle said. He's mobile and determined. Just my luck. Don't suppose you have access to a functioning ship? Myrtle did what I can only describe as a robotic eye roll. There's one shuttle, barely. It might get you as far as the next orbiting bureaucracy. That's closer than I am now. I didn't ask permission. I just walked. Down broken halls with flickering lights, past derelict mech suits and graffiti that read, "They erased us," in at least 3 languages. Myrtle rolled beside me, muttering to himself about rusty footprints and insurance liability. The launch bay door groaned open like it hadn't moved since the last time people cared. The shuttle inside was compact, ugly, and looked like someone had built it out of spite and spare parts. Perfect. You know, Myrtle said as he hovered onto the ramp behind me, you're probably going to get shot out of the sky within 5 minutes of re-entry. I smiled. If they remember how to shoot humans, I'll take that as a compliment. We launched with a rumble and a cough of questionable fumes. Stars stretched and bent as the nav system flickered to life. Somewhere out there, the galaxy had moved on. But I hadn't. Not yet. And judging by the locked data module blinking red on the dash, someone else hadn't either. The classroom smelled faintly of ozone and ambition. A light breeze hissed through the micro-ventilation panels in the ceiling, which was currently displaying a looping hologram of a glittering asteroid belt. Every now and then, a comet whooshed across the dome and made a few students flinch out of instinct. The instructor called it immersive learning. Most of the students called it educational nausea. Kira leaned on her elbow and made her stylus draw an anatomically impossible doodle of the lecturer on her holoslate. Professor Galwin, whose eyebrows had their own gravitational field, and a voice that could dehydrate an ocean. "Now, class," he drawled, pacing with the solemnity of a man who hadn't laughed since the extinction of fish. The post-anthropic era is widely regarded as the dawn of civilization as we know it. Following the collapse of the primitive Terran societies, the Dominion rose from the ashes of chaos and ushered in an age of clarity, order, and bureaucracy, someone coughed. Kira didn't even try to hide her smirk. Galwin paused mid-stride and adjusted his holorobes. As I was saying, humans are considered a mythological construct, a useful metaphor for unchecked emotion, aggression, and poor culinary judgment. He tapped the control orb at his podium, and the image of a towering biped appeared in the center of the dome. A classical rendering, all muscles and menace, with a brooding expression and an absurdly small loincloth. Behold the so-called human. Notice the inefficient bone density, the primitive sweat glands, the completely unshielded organs. Honestly, they were basically walking jelly sacks of chaos. Kira raised her hand. Didn't early Dominion explorers find human ruins on at least 12 fringe worlds? Galwin gave her a long, withering look, the kind that could curdle artificial milk. Rumors, misinterpretations, or worse, fabrications by the Anarchist Guild. You do enjoy their conspiracy casts, don't you, Miss Saroon? She made a gesture of absolute innocence that almost fooled herself. Just doing my civic curiosity drills. The class snorted. Even Jax, the guy who hadn't spoken aloud since semester rotation, gave a wheezy chuckle. Galwin sighed with the fatigue of a man defending reality itself. The important lesson here is that the concept of humanity functions best as an allegory, not a species. Much like the sky serpents of Baltus 7 or the myth of honest politicians. As he launched into a tangent about how humans supposedly couldn't interface directly with neural mesh systems, a clear sign of biological inferiority, Kira zoomed in on the image. Something in the eyes of the hologram caught her. There was a weight behind them. Not the polished emptiness of a made-up fable, but something else, like a memory buried under sand and systems. Her stylus hovered in the air. She wasn't sure why she whispered it. Maybe because it felt like breaking a rule she hadn't been told yet. But what if it's true? The hologram's eye flickered, just once. A tiny glitch. No one else noticed. After class, she lingered in the archive wing, past rows of data stacks taller than buildings and colder than the dean's sense of humor. She entered a restricted node, bypassed the Dominion firewall with a trick she'd stolen from a bored AI named Snort, and searched for one word, human. Most entries were redacted. Some were straight-up jokes. The bipedal boogeyman that hid in your closet and failed math. But one was different, a fragment of a transmission, warped and degraded, a voice low and ragged. If this is extinction, let it be loud. She played it 3 times, then once more. The voice didn't sound like a myth. Back in her dorm, her roommate, Zin, a photoplasmic entity who could exist in up to 4 locations at once, floated in with a frustrated sigh. Another human rabbit hole? Kira, you've got a neural chem exam tomorrow. Kira leaned back on her bunk. I know, but doesn't it bother you? What, that you're obsessed with ancient jelly sacks? A little, yeah. Number. That the Dominion spends so much effort proving something isn't real. Zin paused, one of her projections flickering uncertainly. Okay, that is weird. They were silent a while. Then Kira spoke again, quieter now, more to herself than anyone else. If they were legends, why do I feel like I've met one? My entry was not what one might call stealthy. I'd aimed for a smooth descent onto the edge of the floating city, What I got was a catastrophic flirtation with a billboard drone, a magnetic skirmish with a traffic tower, and a final insult delivered by a politely screaming voice over the city's public intercom. Unauthorized re-entry detected. Please prepare for obliteration. Have a delightful day. The shuttle, to its credit, landed with something resembling dignity, if dignity had 3 broken thrusters and smelled faintly of burnt optimism. I stumbled out, coughing, while Myrtle's voice crackled from behind the smoke. I told you this bucket wasn't certified for atmosphere. It's literally powered by antique sarcasm and duct tape. Still better than Dominion hospitality, I said, patting the shuttle affectionately. The hull responded by falling off a panel. The floating city, Celessa Prime, according to my nav, loomed around me like a palace designed by committee. Everything was polished, sterile, and mildly smug. Towers jutted from the misty underbelly, chained to the sky by gravitational tethers that hummed with artificial restraint. A custodian bot whirred up to me on wheels too small for its ego. "Citizen," it chirped, "please state purpose of entry." "Reclaiming my legend," I said. "Also possibly lunch." It scanned me with a skeptical beam, pinged a few invisible networks, and hesitated. Then it did something remarkable. It panicked. A brief whir, a chime, and then it turned around and ran. "That's not ominous," Myrtle said from the calm beat in my ear. "Congratulations, you just made a cleaning drone question reality?" I walked, avoiding public squares, camera arrays, and anyone who looked like they filed regular reports. I'd been alive again for less than 2 days, and I already had the distinct sense that the galaxy wasn't thrilled to see me. Then I saw her. She was standing in the middle of a pedestrian bridge, holding a paper cone of synth nuts and a stylus, watching me like her processor had frozen. Not like fear, not like awe, like something had just cracked open behind her eyes. She whispered loud enough that I heard it across traffic hums and hoverbike whines. "In school, they said humans were just legends." I paused mid-stride. I've seen plasma fire. I've seen stars bleed and planets burn. But nothing had ever disarmed me like that voice. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. She didn't sound scared. She sounded right. And for some reason, that terrified me more. I raised a hand in something like a wave, or a shrug, or both. She blinked, then dropped her synth nuts, which scattered across the walkway like confused marbles. A nearby vendor bot snapped, "Hey, you drop it! You bought it!" She didn't even blink. A group of students emerged from a nearby shuttle, laughing unaware. One of them bumped into her. She didn't move, just kept staring. "You broke her," Myrtle said in my ear. "Congratulations. First contact and she's already buffering." Then the drones arrived. 3 sleek Dominion scouts zipped overhead, their wings bristling with non-lethal deterrence. Non-lethal in theory anyway. I ducked into the alley just as they slowed mid-air and scanned the street. My face, I suspected, had already gone viral. "She's still watching," Myrtle whispered. "This is either touching or extremely creepy." The girl took a step toward the alley. I raised a finger. "Nope," I muttered. "Not today." She took another step. I bolted. Behind me, I heard the vendor bot shout, "Hey, you forgot your nuts!" If only he knew how true that was. I'd forgotten how exhausting it was to run on 2 legs. Turns out cryo-sleep preserves muscle mass about as well as it preserves social tact. I crashed into a wall, bounced off a sanitation bot, and slid into a side corridor that smelled like antiseptic and fried kelp. Somewhere above me, the drones zipped past with all the urgency of freshly filed bureaucracy. "You're panting," Myrtle said through my earpiece, entirely too calm. "Are you dying? Because I have a notification drafted for the nearest recycling center." "Not dying," I wheezed, "just remembering why humans invented elevators." A soft ping sounded behind me. I turned slowly because one never wants to be surprised by a ping in a city that logs sneezes as suspicious activity. It was her. Same wild hair, same look of someone who just saw a unicorn eating a tax form. "I told myself I wouldn't follow you," she said. "Then I did." I blinked. "Do you always talk to strangers who may or may not be state-level anomalies?" "No," she said, "but you're not a stranger. You're a question." That's the most poetic threat I've ever received. She stepped forward. You're real. And you are either very brave or very, very bad at following protocol. A brief silence passed, broken only by the distant hiss of hover rails. She studied me, like she was building a memory she knew would get her expelled. I'm Kira, she said. Nice to meet you, Kira. I'm recently thawed. Is that a name? Number, that's a complaint. She smiled just a little, a crack in the ice. Then her eyes flicked to my wrist, where my old soul rebellion cuff was half concealed beneath the torn jacket sleeve. Her breath caught. That's Dominion Forbidden Tech. No, I said, holding up a finger. It's a bracelet, very fashionable. Came free with every planetary collapse. I should report you. You should. You absolutely should. And while you're at it, tell them I'd like a refund for the 700 years of unpaid sleep. Kira opened her mouth, closed it, then tilted her head. They say humans were violent, wild, unstable. Sounds accurate. But they also say humans are extinct. Also mostly accurate. You're very casual about being a myth. Hey, when your entire species is reduced to a metaphor and a footnote, you learn to cope with humor. An occasional sabotage. She stared at me a moment longer. Then something flickered behind her eyes. A spark. I recognized it. It was the same spark we used to have before a mission, the kind you got when the odds were trash, the air was thin, and the stakes were completely unnecessary. I want to know the truth, she said. No, you want to feel like the truth is your idea. Trust me, it's safer. I'm not interested in safe. Myrtle's voice crackled in my ear. Just a heads up, drone patrols are looping back, and your face is now part of a mid-tier threat advisory. You've been upgraded from peculiar trespasser to potential symbol of narrative instability. Charming, I muttered, then looked at Kira. You're sure about this? She nodded. I handed her a data crystal, wrapped in the kind of encryption that made lesser AIs cry digital tears. This is the tip of the iceberg, or in this case, the last whisper of a species that used to throw rocks at each other for fun and call it politics. What's on it? The beginning of a very inconvenient truth. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, too precise, too rhythmically soulless to be human. Kira's eyes widened. You have an exit plan, right? She whispered. I glanced up. Well, technically, what does that mean? It means grab my arm and pray you're not afraid of heights. The ceiling hatch above us slid open with a creak of reluctant hydraulics. I jumped. She followed. We soared into the belly of a world that didn't believe in us, toward a future that was about to get a lot more mythologically problematic. We landed on the roof like a pair of confused pigeons, loud, awkward, and highly suspicious to anyone watching. Kira sprawled beside me, wheezing through laughter and static. Okay, she gasped. I'll admit it. Your exit plans are way more interesting than the ones in the student handbook. I've always said nothing bonds people like accidental rooftop parkour, I said, massaging my shoulder, which was now either dislocated or auditioning for new positions in my skeletal hierarchy. Myrtle's voice hissed in my ear again. Please inform the carbon-based liability beside you that she now qualifies as an accomplice, and possibly a historical footnote. She can hear you, Kira said, rolling onto her side. Also rude. I'm a mop bot, Myrtle replied. I was built for stains and sass, not diplomacy. From our perch, we could see the city stretching out like a circuit board with a superiority complex. Celessa Prime buzzed with the quiet hum of systems too efficient to be humane. Drones zipped in methodical spirals. Advertisements flickered on hollow glass towers, one proudly declaring, "Truth is a matter of compliance." Another encouraged the consumption of a nutrient paste called glorp. I chose to find that unrelated. Kira sat up, brushing off the kind of rooftop dust that could probably sue for historic preservation status. Okay, she said, so what now? Do we start a rebellion? Find the hidden archives? Blow something up? Wow, I said, you skipped the entire existential dread phase. Proud of you. I panicked through it in 8th grade, she said, during algebra. I handed her a portable viewer and loaded the data crystal. The hologram flickered to life, an image of a desert world, not labeled, not mapped, but real. This was one of the last places humans gathered before, well, the galaxy decided we were too complicated. Too complicated. We cried. We laughed. We made art that meant nothing and fought wars over ideas. It didn't fit the Dominion algorithm. Kira frowned. So they deleted you. More like, pruned us. Rewrote the memory. Buried the bones and paved over the names with nicer fonts. The screen shifted, showing a face. A younger version of me. Less scars, more idealism. The audio crackled. If they write us out, we'll carve ourselves back in, even if it's only as echoes. Kira stared. That's you. I was a motivational disaster back then. Don't worry, I got more cynical with age. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, I have access to a restricted research vault. My student ID gets me in. If the Dominion's hiding more of this, more of you, it's in there. Are you volunteering to commit an interstellar felony? She shrugged. I already hang out with a historical weapon of mass inconvenience. Might as well lean in. Myrtle interrupted with a beep. Not to be that bot, but 2 new scout units are vectoring toward your location. I suggest less reminiscing and more escaping. Right, I said. Time to go. Wait, Kira said. One more question. Shoot. She stared at me, eyes narrowed. Do you humans really have only one stomach? Yeah. That's horrifying. How do you digest things? Poorly and with emotional baggage, aren't I said. Let's move. We dropped back down the other side of the roof, sliding onto a lower deck where service pipes hissed, and a suspicious amount of steam provided conveniently dramatic cover. Kira grinned. You know, I always thought my life would be boring. Just wait, I said. It gets worse. There's a guy named Vel who shows up later and ruins everything with perfect posture and evil cheekbones. Looking forward to it. As we slipped into the steam and vanished down into the underbelly of the city, I felt something I hadn't felt in centuries. Not hope, but the sense that I might finally be interesting again. The Dominion officer entered the chamber like he owned the air itself. That was the thing about Vel. He didn't walk, he arrived, like a system update you didn't ask for. His boots made no sound, his coat folded at angles that defied wind resistance, and his expression had all the warmth of a frozen warranty. The report, he said, without looking at the aide who scrambled beside him. We've confirmed it, the aide replied, holding out a shimmering data sheet like it was radioactive. Visual, biometric, and molecular trace all match. It's him. Subject 0139, Vel didn't blink. The human. Yes, sir. Live, awake, in Celessa Prime. There was a pause, then Vel exhaled through his nose in a way that sounded suspiciously like disappointment. We spent 500 years deleting that problem. Could he not have stayed politely extinct? The aide offered a nervous chuckle. Vel's eyes turned slowly. The chuckle died. Deploy the custodial authority, initiate protocol null, and issue a level 3 narrative quarantine. But sir, that classification's reserved for things that make history behave badly, Vel said. Exactly. Meanwhile, in a forgotten subtunnel 2 decks below street level, I was engaged in a more immediate crisis, navigating a maintenance shaft built for creatures with better knees. Explain to me again, I grunted, why civilization decided elevators were too mainstream. They cause emotional dependency, Myrtle offered. Also, stairs build character. Kira was ahead of me, muttering directions as we crawled toward her secret entrance to the vault. It's just up here, past the laser grid, under the geothermal regulator, behind the sculpture of interpretive regret. Ah, yes, I said, my favorite artistic movement. We emerged into a narrow passage lit by flickering glow panels, where a pair of security bots were standing perfectly still, as though debating whether to scan or sing opera. Kira pulled out a device that looked like a snack bar and made it beep in 3 tones. The bots blinked. One rotated 180 degrees. The other began reciting a recipe for glorp stew. Security override using a cafeteria algorithm? I whispered. Food-based code is statistically less scrutinized, she whispered back. Also, I was hungry when I wrote it. We slipped through. The vault door loomed, black steel, Dominion locked, laced with bio-authenticators and retinal guilt sensors. Kira inserted her ID, pressed her palm to the panel, and then said clearly, "Access under Clause 9B. Educational intent and personal disillusionment." The door clicked. "Remind me never to play poker with you," I muttered. Inside it was cold. Not just temperature-wise, institutionally cold. Rows of data spires flickered with restricted symbols and encrypted sorrow. No windows, no sound, just secrets humming softly in their cages. Kira led me to a terminal and began tapping with the kind of focus usually reserved for bomb defusal or extremely limited time coupons. "I'm in," she said. "There's a lot." I scanned the flickering files. Exile orders, planetary sterilization notices, propaganda drafts titled "The Human Problem, a Cautionary Fable." One document had my name on it. Under threat level, it read, "Existential." "Well," I said, "that's flattering." Kira's eyes widened. "Wait, there's a recorded message from before the purge." She activated it. A hologram blinked to life. A woman, tall, sharp-eyed, wearing the old resistance patch. She stared straight ahead. "If this is being viewed," she said, "it means at least one of us made it through." "Good. That means they failed." I stepped closer. Kira looked at me, voice soft. "Do you know her?" I nodded. She was our strategist, and she hated me. Said I had the attention span of a caffeinated squirrel. The woman continued, her voice turning grim. "They erased us, but not all. Seeds were planted, codes hidden in systems, warnings buried in dreams. The Dominion feared not what we were, but what we meant." The message ended. The silence afterward felt like a held breath. Kira turned to me. "We have to get this out." "We will," I said, "after we run, because—" An alarm wailed overhead. Myrtle's voice snapped through the comm. "Your location has been compromised. You are officially interesting again, and I am officially annoyed." Kira grabbed the data chip. I grabbed her arm. "Remember," I muttered as footsteps pounded above, "this was your idea." "Worth it," she grinned. We bolted into the darkness with the truth in our hands and a very irritated Empire at our heels. We hit the tunnel floor running, the kind of run where your lungs negotiate a ceasefire and your legs threaten to unionize. The Dominion sirens wailed behind us, which was impressive considering I didn't know smugness could be set to audio. Kira clutched the data chip like it was holy. "Do you have an extraction plan?" "I had a brunch plan," I panted. "It involved toast, but sure, we'll pivot." Myrtle's voice crackled into our ears. "Oh, fantastic. The children stole classified files and woke the robots. You know what this needs? Jazz hands." "I don't have hands for that," Kira said between breaths. "Then scream musically." A maintenance hatch slid open in front of us and revealed a stairwell so old it had moss growing in the corners of the metadata. We dove in. "This stairwell is not up to code," Kira muttered, stepping over something that looked suspiciously like a discarded boot with a bite mark. "Neither am I," I said. "We'll get along." Above us, doors slammed open. Boots pounded the decks. One of the Dominion scout units barked something in High Centralese, which translated loosely as "surrender and prepare for legally sanctioned overreaction." Kira skidded to a stop at the bottom of the stairs and whipped out her wristband. "There's a bypass port here. Please tell me it doesn't involve interpretive dance. Not unless you count inputting security codes with theatrical flair." The wall blinked open. A tram bay stretched out before us, abandoned but alive. The rail system still hummed like it resented retirement. Kira jumped into the nearest car and began interfacing with the control pad. "You're going to hijack a government tram?" I asked. She tapped a few keys. "Number I'm going to borrow it with deeply questionable permission." Myrtle beeped. "Just be aware, if this thing starts playing Dominion onboarding music, I'm ejecting myself." The tram doors hissed closed just as the patrol reached the platform. A blue-suited officer slammed a hand on the glass, then made the universal gesture for, "You're going to be paperwork." I saluted with 2 fingers and a smirk. The tram surged forward. "Where are we going?" Kira asked. "There's an old comm relay in the outer verge. Before the Dominion, it was used to broadcast across unfiltered systems." She frowned. "I thought they scrubbed that." They tried, but humans were persistent and weird. We liked hiding things in inconvenient places. Myrtle sighed. Like your emotions and your trash. The tram swerved left with a sudden lurch that suggested whoever designed its navigation hated equilibrium. So, Kira said, holding onto a rail, once we upload the files to the relay, then what? Then everyone sees the truth. And the Dominion does what exactly? Says sorry with a fruit basket? They'll try to discredit us, frame it as a hack, maybe even invent a fake virus and blame us for it. Classic PR strategy, she said. Invent a threat, then offer to fix it. Exactly. But if we spread it far enough, fast enough, someone will believe. Kira stared out the window. The cityscape blurred into lines and lights. You really think this can change something? Not everything, I said. Just enough to make them nervous. There was a pause, then she looked at me sideways. You're smiling. I'm smiling because I know what comes next. She blinked. What? Every rebellion starts with someone extremely underqualified doing something incredibly reckless. The tram entered a tunnel lit only by flickering service lights. Myrtle cleared his throat, which was impressive considering he had no throat. Incoming transmission, unauthorized, masked source. Kira and I shared a glance. Put it through, I said. The speaker hissed. Then a voice emerged. Cold, clipped, deliberate. Subject 0139. Your resurrection has been noted. Surrender now, and your myth may remain bloodless. I leaned toward the mic. Tell Vel he can keep his myth. I'm here to restart the species. The line went dead. Kira's eyes were wide. That was him? Yep. He sounds like a spreadsheet developed sentience and started judging people. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about him. The relay tower looked like someone had tried to design a majestic spire, and halfway through said, close enough, then gave it a personal force field and a warning sign in 8 languages. It jutted from the rock like a grumpy tooth, surrounded by abandoned hover pads and the skeletons of once ambitious tech startups. We arrived via a stolen service glider, whose dashboard was plastered with motivational stickers. You're doing great, read one. The moment we landed, a panel fell off and burst into harmless, mildly judgmental sparks. Myrtle trundled down the ramp, scanning the structure. I'd estimate a 27% chance this thing doesn't explode mid-broadcast. 32% if you're touching it. Kira was already halfway up the side hatch, data chip in hand, muttering to herself like she was reciting a list of reasons not to panic. This was supposed to be theoretical, she called over her shoulder. I was supposed to write about history, not get tackled by it. Welcome to the elective course they don't advertise, I said, hauling a power conduit over my shoulder. Inside, the relay was still functional, barely. Lights blinked in defiance of entropy. Terminals hissed like they had opinions. The central core pulsed with old energy, a relic of the time when humans used analog hope and digital grit to punch through interference. Kira linked the chip to the transmitter. The files began to load, the percentages ticking upward like a slow drum beat. 12%, 18%, 22%. Then the alarm went off. Myrtle rolled in a circle. That's the "you've been found and someone is about to overreact" alarm. I know that alarm, I said. It used to play every time I opened my mouth during council meetings. Kira hit the accelerator on the data feed. Can we stall them? Define stall, I said. Do you mean delay their arrival or deeply disappoint them with our life choices? She glared at me. I'll take that as delay. Outside, the Dominion ship descended with all the subtlety of a lawsuit. It hovered just above the ridge, sleek and silent, painted the kind of gray that screamed, I've never smiled in my life. Vel stepped out. Of course he did. He walked toward us like a storm wearing a uniform. Behind him marched 4 custodial enforcers, all glowing eyes and sharp edges. I stepped out first. Vel stopped 10 paces away. You don't look extinct. You don't look like you get invited to parties, I said. He didn't react. The man's facial muscles were apparently classified. You're interfering with Dominion information protocols, he said. That is an executable offense. Kira appeared behind me. So is historical erasure. Vel actually blinked. I smiled. She's new. Idealistic. Probably your worst nightmare. He raised a hand. Give me the chip. I'll erase the files and you'll fade again. Quietly. Kira's voice was calm. It's already uploading. Vel's eye twitched. Inside, the relay clicked. 74%, 81%. I stepped closer. You erased our bodies, not our ideas. You made us into ghosts, but ghosts don't die. They haunt. Then I'll exorcise you, he said and fired. The blast should have incinerated me. It didn't, because Myrtle, in an act of heroic absurdity, launched himself from the rooftop and intercepted the shot with a dramatic bzati pow and a shout of, "For the record, I hate this." He exploded in a flurry of sparks and sass. The relay hit 100%. The signal went out. Not just here, everywhere. Screens blinked, walls flickered. Every Dominion terminal coughed up the truth. About the purge, about the humans, about the lie they'd been taught to memorize. Vel stood frozen. Kira looked at him and said, "Oops." The custodians hesitated. One actually stepped back. For the first time, the unthinking machines of order paused in the face of unscheduled reality. I turned to Vel. "Congratulations. You've lost control of the narrative." He didn't reply. He just vanished in a shimmer of static, probably teleport recall. The Dominion hated losing, but they hated losing publicly even more. Kira sat on the edge of the console, breathless. "You think it worked?" she asked. "Oh, it worked." Outside, alarms were sounding in every language. History had just restarted, and it wasn't following orders anymore. The Dominion news feeds imploded within the first hour. Official anchors stammered through their scripts as ancient human footage hijacked their broadcasts. Documentaries long buried resurfaced in vivid color. A boy learning to play the guitar in zero-G, a girl painting stars on the inside of a mining dome, soldiers laughing during downtime, someone crying over a photo of Earth they'd never seen. Real people. Real history. For the first time in centuries, the public saw that humanity hadn't been monsters. Just loud, complicated, emotional, inconvenient. The kind of species that ruined perfect order with unpredictable beauty. In the days that followed, protests broke out. Not violent, just messy. Students standing silently in lecture domes holding signs that read, "I believe in ghosts." Civil engineers spray painting quotes from the Purge archives on sanitation drones. Even a group of cafeteria workers refused to serve Dominion brand glorp until Vel was removed from office. That last one might have been unrelated, but I took the win. Vel vanished, as bureaucrats do, into silence and shadow. No resignation, no speech. One day he simply stopped showing up on feeds. Kira became an overnight symbol. Not that she wanted to be. Her first reaction to seeing her face plastered across protest walls was, "I look like I just discovered lactose." She didn't go back to school. She didn't need to. She started a new archive, a public one. Open source, untouchable, built across decentralized systems that could never be scrubbed. She called it the Echo Index. Subtle, number effective. Absolutely. Myrtle didn't make it. But somewhere, someone rebuilt him. At least we think they did. Every now and then a sarcastic comment shows up in the system logs, signed EL9. Once, Kira's files mysteriously reorganized themselves into alphabetical snark. We didn't ask questions. As for me, I didn't stay. People wanted me to lead, to stand on stages and make speeches, be the last human, the legend. But legends don't age well under spotlights. They fade better in motion. I left the city 3 weeks after the signal went out. No parade, no farewell. Just a quiet goodbye at the edge of the atmosphere. Kira gave me a hug that was somehow both awkward and bone-crushing. "Where will you go?" she asked. "Wherever the next lie needs a dent in it." "Think there are more of you out there?" I didn't answer. Just gave her the same half smile I always did when the truth felt too big for words. Now I drift from colony to colony. Not hiding, just watching. Sometimes I see the signs. A mural painted in ancient Saul script. A kid pretending to be a Terran warrior on a rooftop. A librarian who offers me a book without a title and says, "This one's not in the catalog." I never stay long, just enough to remind them that the myth was real. that the past didn't vanish. It evolved. Sometimes I catch my reflection in glass and barely recognize myself. Not because I look older, though I do, but because I'm lighter, less angry, like I finally found a place where the weight of extinction doesn't sit in my chest. I'm not a symbol anymore. I'm not a ghost. I'm just a man with a long memory and a new reason to keep walking. One night, on a moon that didn't have a name, I sat at the edge of a crater and looked up. The stars looked different, or maybe I did. Kira's voice buzzed through the comm, crackly and formal, full of her usual blend of insight and impatience. Hey, Fossil, just wanted you to know, they've added Terran history as a core subject next cycle. First lecture's called The Day the Myth Walked In. Also, there's a plush toy of you now. It's disturbingly cheerful. You're welcome. I laughed, full and unfiltered. Maybe that's how legacies begin. Not with fire, but with laughter, a whisper, and a quiet decision to remember.